Good evening, Graham. Good
Hello,
evening,
Charles.
Anthony, and welcome. This is Sunday evening, 6 o'clock, and all is well in the world as far as I know, Graham. I haven't heard any dramatic,
Really, the whole world? That's pretty impressive, Charles.
generous, I'm in a hopeful state, Graham.
Yeah, you're not joking.
Look, we have
Deluded is
reason to
more like it.
celebrate today because Donald Trump has announced that he has taken a cognitive test, and it's revealed that he's got 30 out of 30 on this cognitive test without giving any more details on quite what the cognitive
Right,
test
yeah, but
involved.
wasn't it for 3-year-olds?
Well, I think you see, you've gone straight down the cynical line, but the significance is
Mm.
apparently, according to Trump, it showed that he was super bright.
Yeah, super bright in what way? I mean, super bright for himself, maybe.
That, yeah, I mean, and in past generations, the word super bright would have been scorned by any grammatician as just not existing anyway. So we'll leave him.
But is grammatition a real world? A real word? A real word?
I
Grammatition,
reached for it.
is
I
that real?
reached for it in desperation.
Yeah, I'm not sure it is.
Now look, Paul McCartney is
It's the sort of thing
actually
Trump would
not
say.
that much older. It is. Paul McCartney is not actually that much older than Donald Trump. Donald is, I believe, about to hit 80. McCartney is, what, 83? Is that right?
He'll be
83?
84. He'll be 84 in about a week's time or less.
Your picture's disappeared. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Good. Right. I've no idea what's happened, but the Zoom picture's disappeared. Anyway, so we plow on. Right. So he's about to be 84. Now, he has got a new album which came out. He had a new album that came out on Friday, and had been trailed by a single that had sort of taken him back to his Liverpool youth, and that maybe actually is an overall arch of where the album is taking him back to his past. Graham, what is the album called, first of all, which may give a clue to the theme?
The Boys of Dungeon Lane.
And was he a boy of Dungeon Lane? Is that where he came from?
Well, I've been to Forthland Road where his house was that he lived in the 50s with his dad
Mm,
Jim and brother
mm,
Mike. And I've been
mm.
inside it because the National Trust
Oh
runs
yeah, of
tours
course.
these days, has done for a while. But I believe that Dungeon Lane's around the corner, but I didn't notice it at the time.
Right.
But interestingly, The Boys of Dungeon Lane, when I first heard that was a title before I knew anything about it,
Mm.
sounds like an Irish line, like an Irish song. I'm
Yes.
sure there's a Pogue song about the boys of County Hell or something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
considering that McCartney and Lennon had Irish roots in their
Of
family
course.
background,
Yes.
the boys of Dungeon Lane sort of accidentally suggest Irish roots.
So, Graham, you been trailing the podcast tonight. By the way, that is the voice of Graham Chalmers, who he may wish to introduce himself. He may not.
Well, no charm events, gigs, magazine, Harrogate advertiser, senior reporter.
That says it all. I'm Charles Hutchinson, journalist, and
Both based in Yorkshire, although we're obsessed with Yorkshire and Harrogate and York and Leeds and Sheffield, this is a podcast which looks nationally and internationally as well.
yeah, that's not because of, well, obviously we have these two big egos, and therefore we need to inflate them across the world, but also because actually there are topical issues that come up, and subject matters of which McCartney doing a new album, it clearly is one this week. So, Graham, yeah, so I was in a roundabout way asking there, when you suggest still firing on all cylinders, and then keyword nearly.
Well, I have to admit that the first Paul McCartney album I bought when it came out at the time was
Mm,
Red Rose Speedway 1973. And I've been rating Paul McCartney albums and buying them ever since.
you have.
And there is really no such thing as a bad Paul McCartney album, except by his own standards. So, by anybody else's standards, Red Road Speedway is a good album. By Paul
Mm,
McCartney's standards, it was like so so. And that's
mhm,
been the theme of his whole career, judged by the high standards that he himself created. So the question always is that, okay, obviously this is good, but is it good compared to his great albums or his great songs? So you get to be quite nitpicking when you deal with McCartney albums. So
mm.
you approach it with enthusiasm but some caution. And The Boys in Dungeon Lane, which is co-produced by a young guy called Andrew Watt, who also co-produced the Rolling Stones' last album, Hackney Diamonds, at Paul McCartney's suggestion. I mean, he's in his 20s, and it's not. And I think The Boys of Dungeon Lane is possibly his best solo album since Memory Almost Full back in 2007, which is nearly 20 years ago. And I think the reason for that isn't completely the songs, because the style of it's a cross between New, which came out in 2013, Egypt Station, which came out in 2018,
Yeah.
McCartney 3, which came out in 2020. It's a sort of like bewildering variety of tangents and pop styles with a little bit of like earthy, down to earth acoustic, bluesy, autobiographical stuff chucked in, and a bit of clever clogs arrangement. And that's been his shtick almost the whole last 30 years. And it's not the first time he's looked back. I mean, he started looking back on Chaos and Creation in the Backyard in 2005,
Mm.
and Memory almost feels full of stuff looking back. But I think this one feels real. This one feels different. It doesn't feel overproduced, which McCartney can sometimes feel like he's worked too hard on it, especially on New 2013. And
Mm.
it even when the songs aren't the greatest songs, the arrangements seem to be more precise, less indulgent, and always elevated by a great guitar line, because McCartney plays about 15 different instruments this album. There's virtually no other people on the album except occasionally Andrew Watt, the co-producer, and a bit of backing vocals on one track by Chrissy Hind and
Mm.
Shirley and Spiteri. It's
Mm.
all him. And the guitar lines that elevate even the average songs in the album are all McCartney, and they're great guitar lines. So you end up, even though you're trying hard to find fault with it, it's quite difficult to find that many faults with this album, which makes you think, wait a minute, this must be a really good album by definition.
I'm going to ask you about the voice. I mean, when McCartney performed for pretty much 3 hours at Glastonbury, I think the voice held up remarkably well there. When I heard the first single off this new album, there was I don't want to call the word, I don't want to use the word vulnerable with the voice,
Hmm.
but it's a little thinner, I think it would be fair to say. How does that have an impact on the songs? Does it actually add to them in some way because of the age that he now is, as a awful word, octogenarian, but that is what he is?
Hmm. Well, when you hear Days We Left Behind, which is a truly great track by McCartney standards, it's a minor classic, but it's a really
Mm.
great track. Very, very moving and poignant and quietly melodic. And you hear Down South, which is even more acoustic and just him with the guitar,
Mm.
basically. When you hear those two quite Spartan tracks, you can tell he sounds like an 83-year-old
Yeah.
or 84-year-old. But the rest of the album, which has more instruments on it and you know, more complex arrangements,
Mm.
a lot of the time you forget he's 83. A lot of the time his voice stands up really well. And like the opening track, As You Lie There, which is there's quite a few little surprises here and there in the album as well, which you wouldn't expect. So
Mm.
As You Lie There, the opening track, has him doing a spoken word thing throughout
Mm.
it, almost like you'd heard the streets, except without the hip hop and the dance related
Yeah.
bits.
Yeah.
And when he's just his voice on As You Lie There, he sounds 83. But then when he gets to the singing bit, he doesn't really sound 83. So it isn't an album of a croaky old man
No.
singing croaky old songs. There's only a slight flavor of that. Overall, the pop songs and the great moments with the great, rich instrumental complexity all sound like a man in his 50s.
How does it stand up against Paul Simon's last album, which I know you reviewed here on this podcast, which was, I think, actually an album of what, seven songs, I think, and they were longer songs. They were kind of think pieces as much as anything. I merely make that comparison because, of course, Paul Simon is in this country. Actually, the tour may be over in this country now, but he's been playing dates across England on this tour. And so I just thought I'd throw, as someone who had such melodic gifts like McCartney, exquisite use of instrumentation, sublime ability to lift us transcendently with the songwriting. How does it compare with Paul Simon's most recent album?
Well, you've got to say that people like Neil Young and Paul Simon and the Rolling Stones and the Who, they're still capable of sounding like they care and they've got some reason to exist.
Mm.
But in terms of actual songwriting skills, especially in terms of melodies, the McCartney album, The Boys in Dungeon Lane, is way better than all those acts. he can
Fascinating.
still
Yes.
write very good, well arranged, intelligent pop songs.
Mm.
And I think the thing about Boys and Angelina is impressive is that the first three songs of side one, if we were treating it like a vinyl album, hang together well and are all a high standard. And the final three, maybe even five songs of side two, all hang together and are all of a high standard. So that's already like eight songs on an album that are a high standard quality of songwriting. But
Mm.
that's forgetting that in between those start and finish, there's other tracks which are also interesting and pretty good. So again, you start thinking, well, this is a good album. You know, I'm trying to like pick it apart, but this is a better album than Egypt Station, partly because Egypt Station went on for like nearly 70 minutes and
Yes.
could have done with being edited, and better than New, which again had too many tracks. It's better than those albums. So I think it's one of his best solo albums,
Mm.
which at the age of 83 is quite remarkable.
It's remarkable, isn't it? And I think again, I think he's. I mean, he did the last ever the Late Show, which is the final episode with Stephen Colbert. He was the surprise guest, as it were. So he's been out in America talking about the album, and I'm not sure if he's playing dates out there. Maybe he is, but um, this is not someone who's quietly going into the backwaters, is it?
Well, no, once again, he's produced a good album off the back of Beatles activity. So in the 90s, when he, George, and Ringo did the anthology TV series and albums and did versions of Real Love and Free as a Bird, he
Mm.
came back from that Beatles experience by doing Flaming Pie album, which
Yep.
was his best album for about 15 years.
Mm.
And following the Get Back documentary and Now and Then, the very poignant single that he made with George and Ringo and
Yes.
sort of John recently, a couple of years ago, which
Yeah.
was quite a strong, very moving song
Mm.
and very well arranged by McCartney himself. He's come off the back of that, and you can feel the Beatles quality and sound feeding back into the Boys and Dungeon Lane. There's quite a few little slightly psychedelic moments and use of the mellotron and little hints of like Penny Lane or Strawberry Fields, but nothing, obvious or tacky or
Mm.
cheesy or
Mm.
you know, he's not doing it for the sake of like getting Beatles fans to buy the album because there is a theme to the album, and a lot of lyrics are genuinely looking back, and they're not just looking back to his childhood. There's a lot of lyrics are influenced by his love of John and his love of George, and
Mm.
it ties into the John and Paul book by Ian Leslie that I talked about recently,
Yes.
which shows that John and Paul, although they obviously had no sexual relationship, were more than just best friends. That it was like a romantic relationship.
Mm.
And a lot of songs that Paul writes that sound like the love songs are quite often really about John rather than about Nancy's his current wife or
Yeah.
Heather or Linda
Yeah.
or even Jane Asher back in the
Mm.
1960s.
Mm. Mm. So, Graham, one can't sort of do a crystal ball gazing as to whether this will be McCartney's last album, but um, it looks to me that he'll continue making music all the while he is on this planet. He's not someone who's going to stop.
Well, it's taken him 6 years to get this one out since McCartney 3 in 2020.
Mm.
In the meantime, he's toured America a lot and
Yeah.
played a few gigs in Britain. He's about to be 84. It all
Mm.
depends on his health. I'm
Yes.
pretty sure, like all the 60s and 70s greats, he will not stop
No.
unless time
Stops
and
him.
health and his own body force him to stop. Which
Mm.
means as long as he keeps going, there's bound to be another album.
Yeah.
But you
When I'm
never know
60,
what's
when
going
I'm
to happen.
64 looks looks very distant now, doesn't it?
Well, bizarrely, 64 sounds quite young for McCartney now.
It does, exactly. And indeed it does. Now, Graham, by way of contrast of Paul McCartney, a Harrogate rapper who doesn't swear, I remember you saying this about this rapper before, is now a legend on the Leeds spoken word scene. Did you go and see this performer in Leeds recently?
Well, yeah, he's got his regular night called Blood the Lines, and we're playing a special night at City Varieties, a fantastic, as you know,
Yeah.
old school 19th century music hall hidden in an alley in the centre of Leeds. And it was a special night
Swan
with
Lane. Mm.
18 different acts from like spoken
Oh,
word to
gosh.
poetry to rap, and quite a lot of it with a live three-piece modern jazz backing who seem
Mm.
to be improvising live to whichever spoken word or a poet or a rap act was on stage. So it was a really interesting night, which would not happen without Lence. And when I knew Lence back in the tens in Harrogate, because he's from Harrogate, a skinny white guy who started off at the tiny blues bar in Harrogate on the jam
Mm,
session and started to get better and better at rap. And I asked him to play with Charmlight upstairs at the North Bar in 2018, which he kindly did,
mm.
because I thought he was really good. And I'd done it slightly as a joke because I thought nobody's less rap or less cool than me. So a Charmlight about rap would be quite funny. But then it turned out to be sold out and absolutely mobbed. So I suddenly had to take it very seriously
Yeah, yeah.
and really get into it, which I did. And it was a great night, a real big success.
Did that
And I
bring a
liked him
different
because
crowd in
he's,
then, Graham? Did it bring a different
what's
crowd in?
that?
Did it bring a different crowd in that night
Yeah,
then?
there was a few charm regulars there, but there was lots of people that I'd never
Mhm.
previously seen at a charm night,
Yeah, I thought
and
that
they were
might be the case. Yes.
proper rap fans. And I liked him because he's intelligent. He does really rapid, quick fire rapping. He's very sort of articulate, and he talks about social issues and political issues, and of course a little bit of personal well-being issues, which everybody under the age of 30
Is
does
into.
these days.
Mm.
But there's no swearing, there's no misogyny, there's very few ticking of PC boxes, and he's quite a serious young man, and
Mm.
he's good at it. So when I found out that Blur the Lines, which he started in 2019 at Hyde Park Book Club in Leeds,
Oh
a
yeah.
really
Yeah.
nice music
Like
venue,
that venue.
that
Yeah,
was a
really nice.
success. I mean, that's been such a success that they sold out Leeds Playhouse with Blur the
Oh,
Lines. So it came to City Varieties as part of Leeds Jazz Festival because it's got a reputation.
yes.
And when the MC on stage was introducing the whole show, he had to refer to Lence because it was Lence that curated or organised the event. But he called him in passing as a Leeds legend. And I thought, wow, Lence has done really well from coming from the blues bar in Harrogate.
Yeah, it just flows better. Lens Leeds legend than Lens Harrogate, whoever. It's clearly better to
Exactly,
be
yeah.
alliteratively speaking to that extent. So Graham this was. I mean, I think it's an interesting format to do to bring the live jazz to it, the improvised jazz, impromptu jazz to it. I mean, that's a structure that you can see absolutely working with spoken word, putting those two together.
Yeah, well, it gave it a genuine beatnik feel. Now, I didn't detect the influence of Ginsberg or
Mm,
Ferlinghetti or
mm.
Gregory Corso on any of the acts. I think they're all too young to actually care that much about 1950s beatnik poets, but it gave a sort of beatnik feel to it.
Mm, mm. So I mean, obviously, so sold out Leeds Playhouse when it was there. Played Leeds City Varieties now. I mean that again, to be going into these venues. I mean, I can think of when Kay Tempest played at played at Leeds Playhouse, rapping there. But it's not necessarily been a consistent thing. At venues. I'm trying to remember the name of the other artist who actually has put plays on there involving rapping musical
Mm,
plays.
mm, mm.
The name is escaping me, but for the Leeds City Varieties, which is the home of spoken word, of course, as we know from Leonard Sax's wonderful rhythmic use of language,
Yeah,
and
that was
in his own
mentioned in the
way.
introduction.
Could you imagine having Leonard Sax introducing this? I mean, bless him. He's obviously
Well,
not allowed to be able to do it, but
Oliver Reese came on stage and he played this amazing guitar solo, improvisational,
mm,
before he did his rapping. And I tried to imagine Leonard Sax introducing him in the good old
wonderful.
days, and I couldn't quite visualize it.
Absolutely. Now, Graham, before we do your third of your subjects, a couple of films I'm going to reflect on. Now, and I've a sort of I mean, it's a slightly contrived link between them, but I'm going to make the link between them. So the first of the two that I saw was The Christophers, and this is Steven Soderbergh's London film with a script by Ed Solomon. And the cheesy link I'm going to make is that because that, to an extent, all intents and purposes, it's a chamber piece between Ian McKellen in his 80s and Michaela Cole, who was the chewing gum star, and it's a fantastic study of contemporary art and English haughtiness, and
Mm.
it's they called it in the Guardian a kind of the year's best double act, and I can see why. Now, here's the link
Mm.
though that I'm
Well, they're a
contriving.
real odd couple, though. They don't look like they should be together in the same
Correct,
room.
correct, and yet that's why it's fascinating between the two of them because they
Mm.
constantly um, as it were, surprising and tricking each other, and you never quite know how they feel about each other. They keep trying to be the top dog between the two of them, etc. So the
Mm.
chemistry is there in that kind of opposites, the trigger points of opposites that's there. So the other one is again a young talent, the Michaela role, obviously in the Christophers, in Tuna, which is the new film starring Leo Woodhall, who's obviously previously.
I've also seen Tuner. I've seen Tuner.
Oh, right. Well, we'll come on to discuss that in terms of. So,
Mm.
White Lotus is, of course, one day that he was in. This is Daniel Roher's film debut. He co-writes it, and it's his first.
Mm.
He's done a documentary before. Did the Russian documentary on Navalny. So he
Yeah.
also co-writes. But where I'm looking at it here is you have a veteran in Dustin Hoffmann, who's late 80s, and one of the rising young British stars, Leo Woodhall. And again, it's about the chemistry between an older and a younger. I mean, that might be a contrived link, but there is you're seeing it.
No, it's not contrived. Dustin Hoffman's
No,
not the star.
no.
It's a glorified cameo, but it's very good.
That's a good way of describing it, a glorified cameo, because I mean, obviously Leo Woodhall is emerging big time now. The actress in the piece, Havana Rose Liu, playing a music college prodigy. I mean, she gets.
John Reno's of the French
And,
actor John Reno's turns
yeah,
up in a
and
not glorified
there's a
cameo.
as himself moment for Herbie Hancock in
Oh,
this.
it was great to see Herbie Hancock. It was a real
I
thrill.
love the fact they actually named him just in case people were going, oh, I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
saying this.
yeah, yeah. He's only one of the all-time jazz greats and a great pop
Exactly.
arranger as well.
Exactly. I love the fact that he was involved. And again, going back to jazz that we were discussing earlier, that's hugely part of this film as well. That I thought it was fantastic bravura filmmaking by both directors. I love that element. But you are watching Star Vehicle to some extent, even though Hoffman, it's only a glorified cameo, he's still utterly watchable at 88. He's
Well,
fantastic value in this film.
his face is just as interesting as it was in The Graduate in
Yes.
1967 or
Yes.
Midnight Cowboy in 1969.
Yeah. So, what did you feel about Tuna? Stylish, very stylish.
I,
It's a,
I
it's
I
a
thought
crime
that
film, obviously.
the plot was quite simplistic
Yes.
and in some ways a bit sort of like genre silly because it involves crime and safe cracking, which seemed a bit of a stretch. But the script was so sensitively non-cheesily done, and the
Mm,
acting was also good, and there weren't any bits that lasted too long. It was just nicely done. But I think that what elevated the whole thing was that so much of the theme of the film was about jazz and classical music, and
yeah.
the soundtrack was obviously full of jazz and classical music. And you could tell that the jazz and classical music wasn't there as a backdrop. It
No.
was like almost the central point of the film. There was a
Mm.
great love of jazz and classical music, which seeped out of the actual slightly silly plot.
The T-shirts worn by Leo Woodhall's character, obviously the young music student, his own obsession with music and how because of his heightened sensitivity, looked like he was never going to be able to pursue
He
the
had a
music.
major hearing problem,
Yeah,
basically loud sounds. He was allergic to loud sounds, which made him ill.
yeah. I, I thought it was stylish, cool. It reminded me to some extent of Ryan Gosling. You're going to be able to name the film, in which he's kind of put into an involuntary position as the driver. You're going to be able to name what the
It's
film was
called
called.
Drive. It's not hard to forget
Thanks very much, Graham. You
or
drove
hard to
me
remember,
towards it at
rather.
the end. I'm only making that comparison there because I think again he's so watchable now as Leo Woodhall in this. This is not. Sometimes you think, has someone been lumped at Hollywood without actually being able to, the minerals to do it? But I think he carries off this role very convincingly.
I think he's excellent in it. Doesn't do anything wrong, but
Mm.
for some reason, Ryan Gosling is a bit more hypnotic to look at in
Mm.
those sort of roles. And I think if Gosling had played the Leo Woodhall role, the
Yeah.
film would have been even better.
Ah, okay. Well, I want to defend the British acting talent here, but I kind of
All right.
know I know where you're going with that,
Mm,
and I can see
mm.
why you'd be saying it. I would, however, just hold up Barbie just to remember Ryan Gosling in a different way,
I know,
please.
but well, Gosling is great in the right role, but give him the wrong role, and he definitely is not great anymore.
I'm glad to hear that because no, I'm not. I don't mean it that way. I'm not. I don't want to write him off. So, Graham,
Charles, Gosling was about to be the guest in our podcast next
I
week. You've
thought that
completely
might.
blown it.
I thought that might be the case. So, Graham, I take it you've not seen the Christophers.
No, so is the Christopher's better than Tuna? And,
I
and
mean,
when I say tuna, I don't mean Tuna, tuna as in the fish. I mean tuna,
are we out of
Tuner,
tune?
as on the piano tuner.
I found myself enjoying them equally, but I do think the Christophers is in some ways a superior film. Obviously, it's a
Mm.
very experienced filmmaker in Steven Soderbergh. What he can still do, though, Soderbergh, is surprise. He's not easy to read, isn't Soderbergh, as a director? And
He's very he takes on every kind of project,
yeah,
and 8 times out of 10, it's an unlikely project, and 8 times out of 10, it turns out to be a great film. So
I mean,
he's
this is an
quite a
unlikely project, isn't
yeah.
it? In its
Mm,
own way,
mm,
a
mm,
grumpy old artist who was a star in his time, but is now outmoded and faded and
mm.
utterly grouchy, which is a wonderful. If you're not playing King Lear, you might as well be playing this role for Ian McKellen and Michaela Cole, who has such a fascinating face. It's such an unusual face.
No, she does.
Um,
She does.
but she's unreadable in this. She keeps surprising McKellen, but she also
Mm.
surprises the viewer. And I like the fact that it's shifting sands all the time. You're never
It
quite
sounds a bit like
sure.
that early 70s film where Michael Caine is against Laurence Olivier in a two-hander called Sleuth, but that's about crime. And it's a cat and mouse game intellectually
This
between
is
the
what
two of them.
this is a cat and mouse game in that
Mm.
she was a student, and then to make money she became a forger. But the situation now is that he's into his later years, and his children, one of whom is played by James Corden. So I say children, obviously adults, but
Yeah.
they smell the opportunity to make money out of their father, but they need her to finish off the unfinished Christophers, which was a series of paintings about his lover of that time. He's never thrown them away, but he's never finished them. And so she's
Mm.
got this dilemma. Does she do copies of them? Does she finish them? Does she make money out of it that way, etc., etc.? He himself is kind of tortured about what to do with them. So it's the two different strategies there. What I think, the fact that they are such ghastly children, they aren't always such nakedly cynical children, no sense of love at all on either side, and they just wanted to
Mm.
make money.
Mm.
That side of it's told very well as well. But interestingly, too, I think you've got that sense of what value actually does a piece have. If you can't spot that it's a forgery, is that an achievement? And in this case, actually, without spoiler alert,
Oh,
when works are shown in a gallery,
yeah.
in a different way, shall we say, to how he had left them. I'm not saying who's done them, etc. But
Mm.
actually, can art be revisited and changed and become significant in its own way when it's been adapted, not as it was first intended. So there's lots of questions about the value of art within the piece as well. There's also probably
I'll
the
ask you one
artistic.
key question. In
Yeah.
cat and mouse game films,
Yes.
the story plotline has to be developed and completed
It
in a
does that.
satisfactory fashion.
It does that,
So
and
the last 15 minutes have to be good, otherwise it undermines the whole film.
they are. They are.
Mm.
I like the way the film ends. I'm not going to ruin the ending of the film, but as character studies, as a chamber piece, it's really strong. Plus chemistry on screen, which is something that's wonderful. Actually, just going briefly back to Tuna,
Mm.
the chemistry between Woodhall and Hoffman. I'm not saying it's reminiscent of Cruise and Hoffman in Rain Man, but there is an element of seeing Hoffman really enjoying playing off a younger performer and still
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
still being the star turn.
Yeah, well, it's a more serious performance by Hoffman than Meet the Fockers, that's for sure.
That wouldn't be difficult, would it?
Yeah.
Now, Graham, last topic for today, as I frantically tap away to re-find it. This is the indie dance rockers called Fat Dog. Are they from Leeds?
No, from South London.
From South
There's a
London.
very large number. There's about 9 people in the band, and they were
Oh,
formed in 2020 in South
yeah.
London, fronted up by an extravagant man with a typical sort of modern hairstyle, which the usual one that started off in Australia, above your ears.
Oh yeah,
Well,
that
Joe
one.
loves the front man, and
Yeah.
he's totally the top, and the band's totally the top, and they're on Domino Records, and their debut album Woof in 2024,
Good
which I
name.
liked, is completely over the top. They do sort of like pounding maximalist mutant disco with a slight sort of Arabic flavor and loud echoey vocals like they were preparing for war, or they were like Frankie Goes to Hollywood on drugs at a nightclub at the end of the apocalypse. It's that sort of like completely over the top, unhinged, immersive music.
I would guess that that's music that works wonderfully well live. How does it work though
They
as a single, which is the new single that you wanted
they're
to mention?
fantastic live, and they're coming to Deershed Festival, I think,
That's
this
right. They
summer.
are. They're on the
Yeah,
bill,
in
definitely.
North Yorkshire.
Yeah.
So I want to see them. The trouble is that sort of sound doesn't make for hit singles. And so
No.
far, even though last year's singles, Peace Song and Pray to That, were good, they don't specialize in melody or pop tunes. So
No.
the question is, can they get bigger? And then a new single came out just recently called Go F asterisk 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 yourself. So I thought, okay, it's quite a provocative title. We're going to get a big noisy banger again from Fat Dog. But
Mm.
instead, it's sort of like, I hate to say this, it's more tuneful but not melodically strong, and
Mm.
it's also cleaner, and it's sort of like almost bland. And I thought, what on earth is this from Fat Dog? Are they trying to be successful?
Mm. So you're discouraged by that?
Well, the Foals, I liked the band Foals a lot from the
Yes.
late tens, from the late noughties through the tens. Did quite a lot of good albums,
Mm.
great live. And on their last album, which is now a few years now, Life is Easier, something like that. It was them blending out, trying to be like sort of like more radio friendly, disco-y, smoother, slicker, less powerful. And it didn't work. It didn't make Foals more popular. It
No.
actually made them less popular. And the route for a band based on their power and their slight, unhinged, fearless rowdiness
Mm.
is not to be bland. If you're going to go down the quieter route, you better write some good songs, because otherwise your original fan base will hate it and nobody new is going to be bothering to buy it. So I'm hoping that this single is only an aberration, not a trend.
Well, all will be revealed at Deer Shed. I've seen the posters going up for Deer Shed, so in York. So obviously, publicity is pushing the festival, and we'll be previewing the festival coming up. Graham, for next week, could you listen to Bell and Sebastian's Scotland World Cup song for us for next week, and give your
Oh dear,
judgment
do I
next
have
week? Because
to?
I've not heard it yet, and so I'm going to be curious to see if you can track down Scotland's song, Bell and Sebastian, surely a wholly unexpected turn in their career. Although
Yeah,
Stuart
but
Murdoch loves his football. Mm.
Scotland's already lost Billy Gilmore from the squad, and Scotland only have about five European class players
Yeah, and he was
in the
one of
entire
them.
squad.
He was
So
one of
to
them.
lose him is a bit of a bit of a blow.
He's no Billy Bremner, though. He's no Billy Bremner.
No, but he's quite a good player.
He's
Anyway,
about
yeah,
as
Bell
short as Billy
Sebastian.
Bremner.
The last time you had a decent Scotland football song was probably Primal Scream in 1996.
Oh, yes.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub production.